Welcome to the Old Ways for the New Age podcast, where we weave the threads of traditional living into the tapestry of modern day life. I'm your host, Hannah, and I'm a naturopath, herbalist, and passionate plant lover here to discuss topics such as daily ritual, intentional living, witchcraft, herbal astrology, plus sharing interviews with inspiring guests, and so much more. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a podcast review if you enjoy my content. I wish to honour and express my deepest gratitude to the traditional custodians of the unceded land on which I live and record, the Wanjerabara people. I want to acknowledge their elders, past, present and emerging, and their continued connection to the land, sea and community. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Old Ways for the New Age podcast. My name is Hannah Forrest. I am your host and we are back for another solo episode today. I'm so glad that you're joining me and I can't wait to tell you all about my trip to Canada, some of the incredible people that I met, some of the experiences that I got to have, and also some life updates and things that will be happening with me in the near future. So again, thank you for being here and let's jump right on in. So as you may know, if you follow me on Instagram or if you tuned into a previous podcast episode, I was actually over in Canada through June and July. So we were there for a month. My husband is Canadian and we were back there visiting friends and family and introducing our little baby to everybody for the first time. This was really great fun and we had a great time. It was a very big, very full 4 weeks and massive plane rides with such a little baby. He's just 9.5 months now. He was just turning 8 months when we left. It was a 14-hour direct flight to Vancouver on the way there and so much longer. It was over 24 hours of consecutive travel on the way back to get home. And he did end up with jet lag on the way home. So I have not had a lot of sleep the last couple of weeks since we've been back. And a lot has also happened in my personal life, which I can probably catch you up on some of that sometime in this episode. But it was a great trip. It was great to see everybody. And I want to share some of the things that we got up to while we were there. Now, I want to preface this by saying I'm going to do a bit of a show and tell. So if you didn't realize, I actually post the video version of these podcast episodes up on YouTube now. So you can go and have a watch and see the things that I'm going to show you. I was trying to think of the best way to actually show everybody some of the cool stuff that I found while I was traveling, but this seems like the best way to do it. I may also do some photos in a Substack post, but for now, this seems like the easiest way to do a fun show and tell of my goodies that I snuck back in. You may also see that I have a different background today. This is just a different shot of this room. This is my beautiful Narnia wardrobe over here that I grew up with and now have and don't have a room for at this point in time. So it's down here in my workspace, but it is so cute. And there's the bookshelf you're used to over here with all of my cards and books. So definitely, if you haven't seen, these videos are not fancy, but if you haven't seen the videos, check out the YouTube channel. You can find it in the link in our Instagram bio. And yeah, that's the best place to go to find that. You could also Google Old Ways for the New Age YouTube and it will probably come up. So when we went to Canada, we first went to BC, British Columbia. We stayed with some friends in Vancouver for a couple of nights and then we went over to Vancouver Island. It was my first time to Vancouver Island. I've always wanted to go and it just somehow always seems to be that thing that falls off the list of things we're going to get to do for one reason or another. So this time it was definitely a priority. And when I found out we were going, I Googled Vancouver herbal events to see what came up. And it was just kismet really in a few different ways. But the Vancouver Island Herb Gathering was happening the exact week that we were there. And so we jumped online. We waited, actually, we signed up to be notified when tickets went on sale and we got our tickets, early bird tickets, and we went. So that was amazing. And it turns out that the farm that they held the Vancouver Island Herb Gathering on actually was the same farm that beautiful Beck, Wildwoods Lane Apothecary on Instagram, who runs Rad Herb Australia, she is one of the founders of Rad Herb Australia. She actually worked on and did her apprenticeship for a year on that farm. Innisfree Farm is what it's called. So you can Google that. They have a beautiful, like stunning arrangement of herb gardens. They have a beautiful property, a cafe. They have a little farm shop as well where they sell their products that they make with the herbs that they grow. And it is owned by a very accomplished herbalist named Chantal Cabrera. And yeah, it was just so magical to get to see the place also that means so much to Beck. And she told me some names that I should look up while I'm there. And so I got to meet Chantal and I got to meet some of her other friends as well. And that was really special. So the Vancouver Island Herb Gathering is kind of like the little sister festival to the Canadian Herb Conference, run by Yarrow Willard and a board of other people, which is just so wonderful that they have such a great event in Canada and that these passionate herbalists are putting so much time and love into creating these wonderful events. So I'm very grateful that it aligned and I was able to go. It was a 3-day event, but then they added a 4th day, which I'll explain in a second. And basically, there was just an amazing lineup of really fantastic herbal speakers. There were some market stalls. There was food, which was incredible. It was catered by some really, really amazing chefs. It was really delish. And then also, Yarrow had his harmonic arts team there running an elixir bar. So you best believe I was there getting my daily cacao fix with mushrooms, of course. And that was really fun. So there were workshops as well, like more hands-on workshops. And I'll tell you the ones that I got to participate in. So I have the actual program here with me so that I can tell you what I actually got to sit in on. And we had the baby, so we literally were in Vancouver for just a few days staying with friends, and then we went to the island via ferry and went straight from the ferry and drove straight to this event. Because there was one talk that I didn't want to miss, and it was on the first day, and it was the only talk that she was doing the entire weekend, and that was with Dr. Jackie Wilkins of Salish Medicines / Among the Wildflowers on Instagram. And I have loved her work and followed her work for a very long time. It would be a dream to have her on the podcast at some point. So let's put that out into the ether and see if we can make that happen at some point in the future. But I didn't want to miss her talk. And so we hustled to get there with a baby, and all 3 of us went along, and I caught most of her talk, which was really, really wonderful. I got there just as she was starting. So her talk was called Remembering Sweetness with Dr. Jackie Wilkins, and it was a really lovely talk that she did. And she also did a bit of a hands-on demo. It was in the kitchen space and like in the cafe space, and I got to try some of the things that she made. I think there was a syrup that she turned into a drink that involved fresh strawberries and lemon balm, and that was absolutely divine. So she's so talented, and I love formulation, have a passion for formulation and making things taste good, as well as having a really beautiful energetic synergy. So that was really great to see somebody who also has such a passion for that and really such a gift for blending herbs and plants and food. So yeah, that was definitely a highlight for me. I actually now see that she did a storytelling session with another speaker on the Friday evening, quite late. But we weren't able to stay for that. So I'm glad that I caught her on the afternoon session. On the Saturday, I wanted to be there for the first session of the day. Basically, it was split into 3 main sessions in the day, I believe, and it was quite a full day. So they actually had events starting from 7 in the morning and they finished around 11 o'clock at night. So it definitely was not a small event. They had it jam-packed with so much goodness. So it was worth the price for your ticket, absolutely. So the one I caught on that first Saturday morning session was Like Bile in Your Throat, the Acrid Materia Medica with Sager Popham. And if you know Sager, he runs Evolutionary Herbalism, which I already loved his work, and just getting to see him speak really I respect him even more now. I just thought he was such a wonderful human being and gentle human being and great father. They were the things that came to mind first. And then also fantastic teacher. Seriously, such a great teacher. He teaches like I teach, and I really love learning that way as well. And it was interesting learning a bit more about the acrid materia medica. I was a little distracted in that one with the baby, but yeah, really, that was a great talk as well. And we got to do some taste testing of some acrid herbs as well. And I think the main one I wanted to taste, I think, was the blue vervain. So yeah, there were some cool ones he had from his own apothecary that he brought along. And that's what I loved about this event, is that it definitely, even though there were so many accomplished herbalists there and accomplished business people there, herbal business people, it was still a very grassroots community feel. And that takes talent to be able to pull that off, to have such high quality speakers and such a high quality event, yet still a really homey, cozy community feel. The session 2 on the Saturday, I actually sat in on a talk with Yarrow. So if you don't know who Yarrow Willard is, he does so much, but he runs a beautiful business called Harmonic Arts, which is one of my first introductions to medicinal mushrooms and cacao together. So he's been very influential on my practice and my growth as a herbalist. And he also, you can find him as Herbal Jedi on Instagram, and he has a great YouTube channel on identification and use of medicinal plants. So you can definitely go and see what he has going on. But he did a talk on how to make an impact in herbal medicine, and I believe that is the one that his wife Angela also sat in on. So that was really great to see the two of them talk about their journey in herbal entrepreneurship, which is kind of a very niche area. And I know definitely until recent times, herbalists have not made a lot of money. It was not a career and a life path that it was mostly, it's a calling, right? Like it's a calling. It's not something that people used to go into to make bank. So the theme for this event was right livelihood. So it basically was about entrepreneurship as a herbalist, and that obviously is very relevant to me, and it was very helpful. So the two main ones focused around entrepreneurship that I sat in on was that one from Yarrow and Angela, and then also one from Saja as well. And both I got really valuable insights from, but the one with Saja just really kind of blew my mind a little bit. So both of them were great. Like they started very similar, and then they kind of split off the second half, and just, yeah, some really great tidbits and things that really resonated. So one of the tips that I believe, yeah, it was Angela and Yarrow shared was to hire for culture and not to hire for skill, because skill is trainable if you have the right person who's willing to work hard for your business and this thing that you're creating, right, that you're so passionate about. So the skill can come later with proper training, but the culture, the person, who they are, their essence, their vibration, their community spirit, that isn't something that generally can be taught. That's kind of innate. And that really resonated with me for sure. That following session that afternoon, I listened to The Struggle is Real with Saja. And that, again, as I've said, was just really very insightful. And I got to ask questions to both Yarrow and Saja, and they had very different answers for me, which was interesting. But it's something that I'm going to definitely take back and brew on. And I have been brewing and stewing away and seeing how I can apply these lessons to my practice and my businesses. And it's so hard because there are like four to five different workshops going on and talks going on each session, and 3 to 4 sessions in the day. So, and in between there are other workshops and little events happening, like sound baths and entertainment and music and massage. And so it was impossible to get to everything that I wanted to get to, especially with the baby. And I only had help for half of the time with Chris. So he had things to do with his friends. So I had the baby solo a lot of the time as well. And, you know, babies, they do their best. He's an amazing little kid, but definitely was not the easiest to have when he's excited and shrieking and wanting to play and getting excited and happy. And then we're in the middle of a talk where it's kind of serious and everyone's trying to listen. So it was just about finding a balance between those things. Two of the ones that I missed that evening that I didn't get to stay for was Wheel of the Year with Holly Phillips. I think I sat in on a brief bit of that, but I missed that, generally speaking. And then also Old Man and the Seaweed with Dr. Glenn Nagel. That one sounded great too. there were just so many amazing talks, and it was so hard to choose. Kind of broke my heart a little bit. Then on the Sunday, I caught a little bit of sustainability in herbal medicine with Krista Poulton, and she was incredible. I wish I got to listen to the full thing all the way through undistracted, but that just didn't happen. I did go though and pick up some of her milky oats tincture, and this is like real genuine fresh harvested milky oats tincture, and I'll show you. So for the people who are watching along on YouTube, you can see the bottle of it. I got the mid-size. I got 250 ml, and this is the color of it. So it's very different to a standard oats tincture. And as you may know, oats is one of my most used and favorite plant medicines to work with. So this was really special to be able to bring some of this back. I've already been cracking into it, but it's just a different experience. It tastes quite sweet, light, and obviously you taste the alcohol with, as with any tincture, but a fresh plant, I can tell it's been made fresh plants. So it's just a different experience. The tinctures that I have that are fresh plant tinctures just carry a different energy to them. So, and the taste is definitely preferable for me. One of the ones that I caught a little bit of was a plant walk on session 2 of the Sunday, and that was called Enchanted Flora with Cell Rickwerder. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but she was lovely, and we met some really beautiful plant folk. We met red cedar, which was really special, and some other really sacred plants. And that was, I'm glad I got to catch most of that. That was really special to me. In the afternoon session, I really, really, really wanted to catch Chanchal's talk. So again, Chanchal owns the farm that this event was held on in S3E5 farm, but she did a poison plants talk in the poison plant garden that was in their medicine garden section. So they had a section for colds and coughs, and they had a section, so it kind of went like that, like aromatic digestive herbs, things like that. And they had one of the spots in the medicine garden that was for poison plants, and that is such a fascinating area of plant medicine to me, and I am always looking to learn a bit more. I am by no means an expert. I just find it interesting. It's not my area of expertise, but there are some great people doing great work with poisonous plants. The Seed Sisters are some of those people. Persephone's Path on Instagram, if you want to look more into the poisonous plants, it is obviously an area where you want to really know what you're talking about and have deep respect and reverence for those plants. In working with them. So yeah, I couldn't catch most of it. The baby was just ready to go at that point. But I did get to catch some of it. And I also bought the teacher's notes, which aren't very detailed, unfortunately, but it's a little bit of a dot point of what the session was about and what they talked through. As I mentioned, there were some market stalls there and some really cool people there. So I got to meet Terry Willard, which is Yara's father, and he's been around for a very long time. He runs the Wild Rose College of Herbal Medicine, and I've actually done some courses with them as well. But I did pick up his flower essence book, which you can see if you're looking online. If you're looking on the YouTube video, you'll see it. And there are some really great plants in here that we either don't have very much of here in Australia, or plants that I just haven't really, they're not in our standard set of flower essences. So, you know, dandelion, sunflower, chamomile, St. John's wort, self-heal, you know, all the kinds of yarrow, Shasta daisy, forget-me-nots. There's so many different flowers listed in here. So I'm very excited to get to read through this one and make some essences that I can have available to you guys at some point. I also bought a beautiful piece of artwork, which I just shared today on Instagram, but this is a mini version I'm going to show on the YouTube video of this beautiful piece of art, and this is now hanging in my baby's nursery. It's a gorgeous print, and I think it was originally actually painted and wood burned onto a piece of wood. So it's got amanita mushrooms, other types of mushrooms. It's got some pansies, dandelion, hibiscus, an oak, a thistle. So there's a lot of really beautiful plants on here and fungi friends. So that one had to come with me, absolutely, for sure. I met a really special person. I met lots of special people on this trip, but one person in particular, his name is Robert Rogers, and I met him on the Sunday and knew that they had added a 4th day to the gathering, and there were 2 plant walks on either end of the day, so morning and evening, and then in the middle there was a lecture series from a man named Robert Rogers, who is a mycologist as well as a herbalist and other things, but he is predominantly, as I understand it, a mycologist. And he was so great to talk to, and instantly I went, you know what, I have to make it work. And so I bought a last minute ticket and went along to listen to him talk and give his lecture. And I'm so glad I went. I bought two of his books across the weekend. So one of them I had to order later. I actually bought three. So something really special that Robert does is he does mushroom essences. So this is something I would love to offer in the future. It's just quite pricey and very hard to ship here. So I could have brought some back with me, but they're well over $600 per box of essences. So this is a future down the line thing, but I at least have the book so I can start to learn them now. So his mushroom essences book I grabbed straight away. Then I grabbed his Medicinal Mushrooms, The Human Clinical Trials. And this book is literally just an entire book on clinical trials to support the use of medicinal mushrooms for humans. And so if anybody ever tells you, or the TGA tries to tell you, that mushrooms have no evidence of use, this is exactly what this is for. So it goes through each mushroom and the clinical trials that support its use in humans, and also their mechanisms of action for a lot of them too. And so then the last one that I had to order was the Fungal Pharmacy. Look at this sucker. It is a big book. It is a very heavy book. This took up so much weight and space in my bag, but I had to bring it back. I knew that I needed this book, and it is just your one-stop guide for understanding medicinal mushrooms, how to cultivate them, their traditional uses, medicinal uses, the constituents that help them to do what they do, pictures of the mushrooms, and then also other information. And in the back, what I think I'm the most excited about is there is a few appendices, and they share kind of what mushroom works for what condition, and which ones work in cancer therapies and which ones work to support reducing inflammation and to support the immune system. So, and in the back of here, there are also some lichens as well. And I know he has works coming out to do with lichens in the near future. And he did mention that maybe we could get him over here to do some talks. So maybe that's something I'll look at chatting to him about. And maybe I could even convince him to come on the podcast. Very maybe. I know he doesn't do a lot of technology, so we'll just have to see. But definitely, I was so glad that I did that, and I learnt so much. And I'm looking forward to deepening my practice working with mushrooms in the future, now that I have a bit more wisdom to learn from, and also a lot of clinical evidence as well. We saw friends while we were there, and we stayed with a friend for about a week on the island, as well as seeing some other friends on our way to Victoria, on our way out from the island back to Vancouver. But it was a magical trip. I love Vancouver Island as much as I thought I would. And if we always said if we would ever move to Canada, it would be to Vancouver Island for sure. We went for some really lovely hikes. We just did some really cool nature stuff. And what blew my mind the most was the island was just covered in medicinal plants. Like, I'm talking absolutely covered. There were just fields of St. John's wort, wild roses, mullein everywhere, yarrow everywhere, goldenrod everywhere, all these things that people talk about. The amount of berries growing wild. I found wild blueberries. I saw the blackberries in bloom, but they weren't actually fruiting yet. Salmon berries, thimbleberries, just you name it, we found it. There was some wild raspberries. It was just so special and magical to interact with all of these plant folk and plant kin and get to just see how it is in a country other than Australia. We have a very unique terrain here, and don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful for it, and I could definitely stand to learn a little bit more about our native plants and our native medicine. But I am of European descent, and I very strongly am connected with my Celtic ancestors, and so getting to see these plants that my soul connects with on a deeper level and that I use often in clinical practice / my medicine practices, just to see them growing wild like that was an experience like no other, and also puts in perspective when people talk about being able to run businesses off wildcrafting, and also while wildcrafting is such a problem there as well. Just, you got to see both sides of these things, but it was incredible and got me so excited. My nose was constantly glued to the ground and the trees. looking for wild plants everywhere. So that is a very brief summary of a really great trip to Vancouver Island. And then in Vancouver, we went to a place called Granville Island. And Granville, if you didn't know, I actually been going to Vancouver since I was a teenager, well before I met my husband. And Granville Island is a place that I've been going since my very first trip there. I was about 16 years old. I don't really know how to describe it. It's kind of like a little market town. It's a tourist spot by the water in Vancouver, but it just has this really nice, cozy Dan in real life energy to it. So if anybody understands what I'm talking about, you'll love Granville Island. Dan in Real Life is a movie. For those of you who don't know, go and watch it. It's just got cozy vibes. And there is a handmade broom shop there. I'm going to hold up a flyer. The Granville Island Broom Co., makers of fine handcrafted brooms. And I've wanted one of these brooms since the very first time I went. And Australia, if you didn't know, is very, very tough with customs. And Chris and I talked about getting one sent over for our wedding. And in the end, we just decided not to risk it because having one destroyed in customs would be absolutely heartbreaking. These brooms are so beautiful, the most stunning witchy brooms that are handmade in front of you in the workshop, in the shop there. And just, they are so cool. But this time I decided, no, I have to try and get one back. So what we did was to get a mini hand broom and dustpan. So they had these stunning handcrafted dustpans that I had never seen before. I did keep what wood this was made out of, but I can't find it currently. But this was made by a local gentleman, not by the ladies who run the shop. And look at this thing. It is just beautiful. Definitely go and have a look if you can get on YouTube. But it is a stunning handcrafted dustpan. I don't know what else to say about that. This is just the kind of stuff that I get excited about. And so this is the broom that goes with it. This is, I think, called a whisk broom. And it looks like this. And they go together. And so my home chores have been all that more exciting and luxurious and magical and witchy, being able to use these to sweep up a bit of dust off the floor. Actually, I'm missing something. When we were on Vancouver Island, I also found this really cool little store, and the name of the shop is slipping my mind, but I met the most beautiful herbalist in there, and I walked through the door and I instantly went, that's mine. And I had seen a mug on the wall, and it was my mug, and it was coming home with me, and I didn't care how much it cost, and I didn't care. I just knew that that mug was for me. And so I'm holding it up. If you've been on my Instagram, I've shared it quite a few times, but it's a handcrafted mug, and it has yarrow on the front of it, and it says Achillea millefolium, which is the Latin name for yarrow. And it's my favorite. It's my new favorite mug, and I get great pleasure from drinking out of it every single time. It's by an artist whose Instagram or brand is Earthen Law Ceramics. Just go check their stuff out because they do the most amazing mushroom mugs and cauldron mugs, and I definitely want more ceramics from this artist in the future. But for now, I have my yarrow mug, and I can indulge and enjoy drinking my cacao out of that on the regular. So then we flew to Ontario after we had some really great Mexican food in Vancouver area. And we went to see my husband's family. He is from a small border town, what they call a border town in Ontario, by Lake Huron, which is one of the Great Lakes. So he grew up on Lake Huron in a tiny little beachside town, and they border Michigan. So this time, when I realized we were going back, I straight away knew that there was a person I had to reach out to see if I could connect with them while we were there. And this person is herbalist Jim McDonald. And some of you may know Jim and his work, and I just have admired his work for such a long time. Again, he's one of those few herbalists that I really, really just deeply resonate with. And he's so funny. He's so smart. He has so much clinical experience. He's been a herbalist as long as I've basically been alive. And that's not to make him feel old, but he just has so much wisdom and knowledge to share. And I had to meet him. So I reached out, and he invited me along to one of his course days, which I was so honored to be invited along. However, it didn't really work with our schedules. So we ended up buying tickets to one of his plant walks instead. And even though it was a bit more of a beginner's plant walk, we enjoyed it, and I got to meet some plant kin there that just really made my soul happy. We drove across the border to Michigan, which is no small feat if you've ever been through the American customs. It's not a fun time for Aussies. They do not like us very much. But we made it across and we went to this evening plant walk in a park over there, and we met some plant kin like mugwort growing in the wild. It just made my heart and soul feel light and happy, and just, I don't know why. I guess mugwort is one of those plants that a lot of us have a very special relationship with. So that was really cool. And then I also got to meet bee balm for the first time, and I have some bee balm seeds I'm trying to get back. I've sent them to myself in the mail from a business called Ravensong Herbals, which is on Vancouver Island, and I've been subscribed to their mailing list for years, and they happen to have a pop-up at the herbal gathering. So I bought a few seeds from them, and also a poplar bud oil, and that smells wildly good. Just, it's very strong. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So we got to meet Jim, and I got to go early and chat to him before the plant walk started, and that was a really, really sacred experience for me. I just felt really excited and just super grateful to be able to meet him and get to know him a little bit, and hopefully we will connect a lot more in the future as well. Hint, hint. Unfortunately, the fields of St. John's wort that I found on Vancouver Island and really, really wanted to make an oil with so badly, and just didn't have the facilities or time to do it while we were there, that same St. John's wort was not growing where my husband grew up. So they had different plants there. So I got to see some bee balm in the wild as well. I found wild oregano. I found so much goldenrod in his hometown, and also a hecton of motherwort. It was growing everywhere, and that was really exciting for me as well. It's another one of my favorite plants. So meeting motherwort in the wild was very special. There was echinacea growing wild. I have some photos. It's actually my new profile picture on Instagram that was taken just down the road from where we were staying in his hometown. Again, a very small, tiny town by the lake, and just the amount of beautiful medicinal plants growing there was just mind-blowing. And it was another one of those circumstances where I'm going, why is nobody doing anything with these plants? But sometimes it is also nice to let these plants grow where they want to grow and just exist as they are. Also, our second last day in my husband's hometown, we had driven past on our way to other places this herb farm. It was a sign, just said herb farm. It actually said Forest Glen Herb Farm, and there was just a sign pointing down a very long road, and it looked like a whole lot of nothing, but I went herb farm, right? We've got to try and make it there and check it out. So a friend of mine had told me that it actually was pretty cool there. She'd heard good things from other people who had been there before, bought things there before. And so I just had a feeling we had to go. We went on our second last day. We drove down the road, we parked, and I could already see fields of herbs just growing. And then we walked in, and there was a sign that said no photos. So I have no pictures from this beautiful herb farm, but we met the owner outside. Her name is Cynthia. And Cynthia was awesome. We're going to do some seed trading in the future, and she actually is more of a florist. She's a herbalist, but not in a clinical sense. So she actually does a lot of floral work. She's a florist. She's a chef. So she makes a lot of really wonderful teas, salts, culinary spices, but she definitely has a good whole ton of medicinal herbs growing there as well. And so that was really cool. We met Cynthia. Her place was stunning, like incredibly beautiful. I can't even describe it. Like, I'm talking the most beautiful, well done floral wreaths and just bunches of dried flowers and medicinal plants hanging all over the place. It was something to behold, truly, and we will be going back. And the great thing is that Cynthia actually offers people to come and work there on a volunteer basis. And so next time we go back, I fully intend to go to do at least a few days work with her, get to know her better, get to see her in her element, growing plants, growing medicinal herbs, harvesting herbs, and doing cool things with them. So that was a really great connection as well. I kind of like to make friends everywhere I go. So we went into a town that is one of the more major cities outside of where my husband grew up. It's called London, Ontario, and so it's very confusing. Yes, it's called London. I still get confused, but anyway, it is a place called London. It's a town called London, and we went there for a day trip. It's just he used to live there. I went and stayed with him for a month there when he was going through teachers college, so I kind of lived there too for a brief moment. And it's quite a nice city. It's a big city without being. And I had seen something pop up on Google when I was trying to find things that we might like to do, and a place came up called Seven Sisters Apothecary, and I just went, we have to go there. So we went there, and it was so magical. The owner, Melanie, was so lovely, and we got along so well, and I was in awe of her space. Her space is one of a kind. It is dark and witchy and moody and mystical, and she has really cool products that she makes herself and other really wonderful witchy local products, and the walls are painted with custom artwork, and downstairs she has a sacred circle set up, a sacred circle space. Say that 5 times fast. And she holds workshops and sacred circle. So she holds moon circles and ritual circles there regularly. If you are local to her, you should definitely go. And they also have a street festival once a year, which I would absolutely love to have gone to. So we might have to line that up one year as well. I did bring back a couple of things from her space, and one of those things is this beautiful olive wood goblet. If you can see, it's a ceremonial goblet, or at least that's what I'm going to use it for. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful. She has some really cool stuff, really unique things there. She has coffin nails and railroad spikes. So it's definitely different to the way that I practice. And that's the great thing about paganism, is everybody's practice looks a little bit different. And it's so great to have a witchy shop doing so many things for the pagan community in their area. So that was just great. And I'm really looking forward to connecting with Melanie in the future as well. So hint, hint again. As I mentioned, I have sent some seeds back from different places, and I also found a whole bunch of really cool brass at a flea market sort of thing that we went to with my husband's family. And so I polished it all up, and there's some really cool candle holders that I brought back. So definitely, I'm sure the person who was looking at my bags through the scanner was a little bit concerned and very perplexed as to what exactly I was bringing back in my bags. I'm sure it's different to what most people bring back in their bags from a holiday, but I had such a great time. Definitely the main reason why we went was to see family and friends, and that was really great to again introduce the baby and just see everybody again. It had been a very long time. It's been 7 years since I was last in Canada, and that's a very long time for me. So that's just due to the pandemic and everything, having a baby, but we do have plans to go back more regularly. And I've realized just today that one of the filming locations for Practical Magic was so close to Vancouver Island, and I'm devastated and really mad at myself for not remembering that sooner. So next time we go, absolutely that is on my list of places to attend and visit, because it's Practical Magic, right? So that's a little bit of a rundown of my trip and some of the things that I did and some of the people that I met and some of the cool stuff that I bought. And now I want to get into what's happening now that I'm back. As I mentioned, the baby got jet lag on the way back. I also got an ear infection and flu with a cold, which is probably why I got the ear infection. And then he also got oral thrush. So it's just been a bit of a wild time. Things are changing around here. I have realized how many listeners the podcast actually has. And it's taken me a long time since Christy finished up to get everything transferred into my name and figure out how to log into everything from my end. It's not as simple as it could have been, just because I wasn't the one who started it in the first place. So it was connected to Christy's Apple ID, and just it was pretty complicated to get everything moved over into my logins and my details. I'm very grateful to everybody who stuck with me in this time. I've also had all of the tech issues as usual. And it's actually pretty brave of me to be trying to record this in the middle of a Mercury retrograde, but here we are. I definitely plan to put more of my focus towards the podcast now, and I'm so excited for that. It's something I've always wanted to do, and just inheriting the podcast in the way that I did has made it a little bit more complicated, but it means that I have so many people listening who maybe wouldn't have found me in the first place if Christy hadn't been involved and started it herself. So that's really cool, and I'm so glad to have you guys here. I'm so grateful that you also want to listen to me ramble. Every time I ask on Instagram what episodes you like, everybody says solo episodes. So thank you. I'm shocked and honored. So more focus will be going into the podcast. I have some really, really, really cool interviews coming up, and I also might do a bit of a different format. I might try doing a bit of a solo section at the beginning of the episode and then jumping into the interview. Let me know what you guys think of that. Otherwise, I can keep them completely separate and just do solo episodes and interviews in 2 different episodes. My schedule at the moment is definitely monthly, but my goal is to have it back to fortnightly. That is my goal. Obviously, I am a mum now and I have a lot of other things on my plate. So definitely a monthly episode is coming at you, but if I can increase it to fortnightly, I will. It's just about finding the time and space to mostly actually edit it. The filming isn't the labor intensive part. It's actually the editing and the posting that takes the longest. If you have interviews you'd like to see or topics you'd like me to speak on, please let me know via Instagram, email, or anywhere else you can find me. And I would love it if you would leave me a rating or a review on your podcast player of choice. And if you do leave me a review, please let me know somehow, because I'm not entirely sure how I find them. So if you could let me know, that would be awesome. And if you do leave one, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because what it does is I think it helps the podcast to be ranked better, but I also think it might be a helping hand if somebody checks us out and isn't sure whether they want to try us out and have a listen. It might just be enough to convince them to join our little community here and have some fun with us. So that would be really helpful. Thank you. So one of my most listened to episodes is the episode that I did on autumn herbs, specifically rosemary and thyme. That one is still so loved by our community here, and so I thought I would jump on and also give you a bit of a plant profile on another winter herb that perhaps maybe you don't use as much, that is something that is great to have as a part of your home apothecary / home herbal first aid kits. And that is mullein. Mullein is how I always knew it, but most people call it mullein, also known as Verbascum thapsus, and that's its Latin name. It is the beautiful basil rosette fuzzy plant, and I actually met this plant in person on Vancouver Island and also in Ontario. It was so special to see it in person. I keep using that word today, but that's just how it felt. It was just such an intimate moment where I got to meet this plant for the first time, and it was flowering because it was summertime. And so it has these beautiful silvery velvety leaves, and in the summer it will throw up a flower spike in its second year. So it's a biannual plant. So it forms its basal rosette the first year, and then the second year of life it throws up this flower spike and it gets these beautiful yellow flowers, and it almost looks a bit like a torch. And traditionally back in the day, witches and other folk would use them to make actual torches out of. So you can dry out the flower stalk and coat them in beeswax, and they were called hag torches. It's a dream of mine to actually make one myself, so I need to get more mullein growing in my yard to be able to make my own hag torches from the plant that I grow. The reason we love mullein so much is it's an amazing herb to support the respiratory system, especially this time of year. It's demulcent, emollient, wound healing, and an expectorant, and really just helps to moisten and support that dry cough situation. In one of my herb books that I have here, I'm just going to read you some of the indications because I haven't written them down today. So bronchitis, it's used in bronchitis for productive and dry cough. Respiratory catarrh, influenza, chronic otitis media, which is an ear condition, and inflamed mucosa if used topically prepared in olive oil, so as an infused oil. This plant is very often used as an ear remedy mixed with garlic oil. And you can find that in many health stores, a mullein and garlic ear oil. So I guess this plant has been coming up a lot for me with my ear infection. I actually couldn't find any of the oil locally to me, but I definitely want to make some in the future. I've seen a blend that has it with the garlic and yarrow as well, and that would be a really potent, beautiful blend to make. But I believe it is using the fresh flowering tops in that one, and I obviously do not have access to that in the middle of winter. It makes a fantastic tea, and it actually was in my Lungs of the Earth formulation for Grown Botanicals, so that was specifically indicated for lung support. If you have an irritated dry cough, if you sometimes, even if you have a productive cough, it can be helpful and supportive. And I mixed that one with marshmallow root, elderflower, and a bunch of other beautiful herbs. So I probably will have that available again in the future. But that was one of my favorite herbs to put in my respiratory blend. I have used it in eye washes and other things too, but the main thing to know with mullein is that you need to very well strain it with a fine cheesecloth or something, or a coffee filter, just because because it's fluffy and fuzzy, it has all these tiny little fine hairs, and they can actually be irritating, and we don't want to irritate an irritated condition further, if you know what I'm saying. So definitely strain that one off incredibly well before you use it, and that'll just make sure that you're getting the best benefit you can from this plant. A little bit of the folklore associated with mullein. In ancient Rome and medieval Europe, it was used for protection, and this kind of goes along with the hag torch / mullein torch tradition. It was used to drive away evil spirits and negative energies, and it was also used in funeral rites during these periods of time. In modern witchcraft, it is associated quite strongly with Hecate or Hecate, and that is because of her ties with crossroads and darkness. So mullein being able to be burned and creating light and driving away negative energy and spirits helps to shine light in the darkness for those going through a very challenging time. Maybe Tower card. I've seen from some sources that the flowers and the tops and the leaves are considered cool energetically, and the roots are considered warm, which is quite interesting. It's considered bitter and astringent, and has an affinity also for the urinary tract. All parts of the plant can be used, but in a recent podcast episode on Herbs with Rosalie, Jim McDonald actually did an episode all about mullein and its uses and how he has personally used it. And he said that he has used the roots actually for incredible back pain, which I find really interesting as in tincture form. So that's also a really interesting episode to go and have a listen to as well. So again, that was on Herbs with Rosalie podcast. I love Rosalie's work also, and those two are so fun together. So it's quite a long episode, but it's fascinating, and you'll definitely get a much deeper understanding of working with mullein once you've listened to that. This plant is connected with Saturn and the element of air. There's all of your energetics and a bit of your astroherbalism there with that plant too. And something I really wanted to introduce into my solo episodes is something that I'm kind of adapting from the Comfy Cozy Witch podcast, which I've been obsessed with recently. And Jenny Blonde, who runs that podcast, she always does a "What's making me feel comfy, cozy, and witchy at the moment" segment in her podcast episodes. And I love that. So what is lighting me up at the moment? That's what I'm going to go with. What's lighting me up? The things that are exciting me at the moment are the Comfy Cozy Witch podcast. Funnily enough, I am binge listening Jenny's podcast episodes at the moment, so I am loving that. I am loving astragalus extract in my cacao at the moment. I'm also loving this beautiful cacao that I did share on my Instagram that I picked up from Vancouver Island from a tiny little health store there. It is a ceremonial cacao from a brand named Black Jaguar, and it has ancho chilies, rose petals, cinnamon, the most incredible plant spices in the ceremonial cacao. And I've been adding a few discs to my regular cacao or just having it by itself. I'm almost through the bag. I'm so sad, but something about it just really excites me and makes me feel warm and cozy, and I'm loving that at the moment. I'm loving getting into my garden and doing home renovations at the moment, so that is sparking joy. And of course, my goal is to turn my house into the Practical Magic house. And also, if we're going to talk about things that bring joy, they have announced the sequel to Practical Magic with Nicole Kidman. She has confirmed it, and Sandra Bullock. So I'm really nervous for that, but also very excited. And I hope that it is just as good, if not better than the original. I don't know how it could be better, but just as good as the original. And by then, hopefully my house looks just like their house. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really glad that you're sticking around. If you're new, welcome to the Always for the New Age podcast. I am so happy to have you here. And I will see you guys again next month for a really exciting witchy interview. So stay tuned and we'll talk soon.